My name is Peter Fishman. I'm Executive Vice President of Deans for Impact. We're a national nonprofit organization. We work with about 200 educator preparation programs across 45 states. We're really committed to this idea of expanding accessible, affordable pathways into the teaching profession, and pathways that are practice-based and high quality. And as more and more states and LEAs and EPPs launch their teacher apprenticeship programs, those of us within the Pathways Alliance, this coalition of 40 organizations, we really saw a need to define some essential elements to ensure quality. The national guideline standards themselves are intended as a template for quality. So as I said during the introduction, they're industry-established, federally approved framework that are intended to be flexible and adaptable. So registration agencies may adopt the NGS without modification, or they can customize them to meet context-specific criteria. By approving the NGS, the Department of Labor has indicated that they're suitable for adoption or adaptation, and that they fully satisfy regulatory requirements for a registered teacher apprenticeship. What are 8 basic components of the NGS that was approved back in July? And then within these, I'm going to spend a bit of time highlighting what the Pathways Alliance Working Group viewed as 7 essential elements that sort of sit within this 8. The working group defined registered apprenticeship in teaching as being competency-based. I'm sure many of you know there's an option to do competency-based, time-based, or a hybrid, and the working group really felt like we wanted to put a flag in the ground around competency-based as being the future in a lot of ways of professional learning within districts, within much of post-secondary education. And competency-based also allows for greater flexibility and adaptation in terms of responding to local context. And the framework includes a sample work process schedule defining 10 competencies, which an apprenticeship must demonstrate mastery of via on-the-job learning and related instruction. Sponsors may choose to use the competencies that are found in the NGS, the list of 10, and then there's sub-competencies below each one, or they can base their own work process schedule on other state or national teacher professional standards. The framework defines related instruction as being interdependent and complementary with on-the-job learning, so that OGL and related instruction are co-constructed among the sponsoring employer and the provider of related instruction. These two things ought to be happening in concert with each other, that they're interdependent and complementary. The NGS lays out a minimum of no less than 2,000 hours of on-the-job learning and no less than 144 hours of related instruction. NGS sets a maximum apprentice to journey worker ratio of no more than 2 to 1. Apprentices should be paid a progressively increasing schedule of wages that includes at least one progressive increase during the apprenticeship. NGS defines probationary period of 13 weeks. That's, again, to be consistent, ensure consistency with DOL regulations. And finally includes some stipulations around selection procedures and having an affirmative action plan in place. It is not the norm in teacher education to have a full school year and 2,000 hours of on-the-job learning. So most states require somewhere between 280 and about 560 hours of clinical practice. 2,000 hours is a significant shift, obviously. I think this is part of what so much of the promise is around practice-based experiences in an apprenticeship program. K-12 students themselves aren't spending that amount of time. And so thinking about on-the-job learning as both time with students and also time in professional learning at the school level, as well as planning time and conceptualizing that as part of the 2,000 hours of on-the-job learning. Second essential element that the working group really zeroed in on is this idea of progressively increasing levels of responsibility and autonomy during on-the-job learning, but putting a flag in the ground to say that at no time should the apprentice be the teacher of record, of course. So again, that idea that an apprentice might start the year doing one-on-one tutoring, maybe doing some small group instruction, and progressively move into co-teaching over the course of the year, a pretty common practice in year-long teacher residency programs. The demonstration of competencies, as described in the work process schedule, be determined collaboratively between the journey worker or the mentor teacher and supervising faculty from the ed prep program. There's a lot of attention that needs to be paid to the relationship between the journey worker and the provider of related instruction, and really ensure that if they're going to be responsible in a competency-based program for evaluating an apprentice's mastery of those competencies, really need to ensure that a journey worker or mentor teacher and the supervisor or faculty from the provider of related instruction have a shared understanding about what those competencies look like in practice so that they're able to evaluate whether the apprentice has mastered them or not. Fourth essential element gets this idea of ratio, that there be a ratio of no more than one journey worker to two apprentices. Again, if we're depending on journey workers to evaluate the mastery of competencies and also provide a lot of support to apprentices, completion of a bachelor's degree either before entering or as a result of the apprenticeship needs to be an important marker. That a four-year degree remains an important marker. Sixth element, and I mentioned this earlier, was to view completion of related instruction as being in concert with on-the-job learning. The requirements to complete an apprenticeship ought to be consistent with state requirements and results in full licensure and not be seen sort of as a pathway through emergency, temporary, or provisional, but rather resulting in full teacher licensure.